So did you have any bodily accidents on your?
Oh, I
on
didn't
your
even I didn't even have that on my list. I
yeah.
totally
See,
forgot we were going to talk about bobsledding. I thought we were going to talk about if people,
was there wetness coming out of the bottom of the bobsled?
not from me, but no, I thought we would maybe first mention for people who were viewing the video of our podcast last week that we had taken the just press record slightly too literally, and they might have noticed that you were a little blurrier than I was, which they might have enjoyed.
Well, look now. I mean, I think
But
we're
now
confident to
we're
say we're
crisp,
fixed.
locked in. We just didn't check to make sure we were in focus on one of
Well,
the
now
cameras, or
just
that
press
you were in
record,
focus.
and we have had people ask us since then. Oh,
Yes.
this exists. This is a thing. So this is a thing. Anyone
is
can
easy.
just press record here. And after our hiccup there, I think you can see now we're back and smooth and in operation. It's pretty crazy because there is somebody like monitoring us and making sure everything is working well from some central command center.
I've assumed someone's been monitoring us for years now.
That's true. So back to your
Bobsledding. So yeah, I teased last week and kind of locked myself in by saying it that I was going to go bobsledding while I was in Utah this weekend, and I did, and it was awesome. And I'd gotten myself a little freaked out. We talked about this with Colin Jost from Saturday Night Live had done a video at the Olympics in Italy. He had seemingly been terrified by his bobsled ride. And then the more I started thinking about it, the things that I'm fearful of are more about like heights and falling. I've done lots of NASCAR and like race car type of things on the ground very
You're a
fast.
seasoned pro.
Well, I just like speed on the ground doesn't bother me. It's the thought of falling or things like that.
Well,
So
I've had to drive behind you several times around town.
and that's not your fear.
I'm sorry. There's a huge buffer. I treat trash trucks, school buses, and Larkin all the same when I drive behind them.
Keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it was good. It was really cool. We were doing like I think 70 miles an hour. The worst part of bobsledding, I mean, once you're going, it's a lot of fun, but you are locked in there, and I don't mean like seat belted. There's nothing holding you.
Did you run? Was my guess correct?
There's no
Were you
push
running
run.
and push starting it?
There's no push run. I will say,
I did ask you before you left. I was like, "Are you nervous at all about the push run?" You're like, "I don't think they're going to let us do that."
You all get cinched in there at a standstill.
So you just lay on top of your buddy, and then
no, that's a 2-man luge. You keep confusing that with bobsledding. We had a professional driver, and then, but they somehow ended up grouping the three of us who were the largest men of the 4 groups going. They were like, "Will you 3 be a group?" And I'm like, I wasn't, and I'm a bigger guy. There was a much bigger guy than me, and we're all pinched in there together. It's very hard. There's not much leg space. There's not much arm space. So you're looking and you're like, well, there's not a seatbelt. There didn't need to be one. I couldn't have gotten out of that thing if my life had depended on it until the guy behind me got out. And I mean, it's so.
There were like 2 pros. Were they Jamaicans?
No Jamaicans. No, 1 pro in the front, steering and braking. And then 3 of us that were paid ride along people. But the push start thing, it makes me think like we could barely get in this thing in an effective way with it standing still. So the idea of running and then 4 of you jumping in it somehow.
Oh, so that's like a hidden thing you wouldn't really know just watching it on TV.
Yeah, the whole thing is like
so when those people fell out in the Winter Olympics and they didn't get in, like that's not like the most ridiculous thing in the world to assume.
Not to me now. I mean, if it's like your whole livelihood. But I now think also, I always assumed these like Lycra suits they were wearing were mostly about aerodynamics, which they probably are to some extent. I now think it's probably primarily about
being lubed up.
It's about reducing friction when you're trying to like
slide into Did they lube you at all? Or you didn't have to jump in?
No, I was wearing like jeans and a big winter coat, which was part of the problem, I think. But no, man, it was snug.
I only learned recently that they steer those things. I just assume everyone jumped in and then they were just like sledding.
I think there's some degree of you're just along for the ride, but there is some steering and there's some braking.
Well, that's amazing.
It was intense. And there's only 2 places in the country you can do it. Park City, Utah, and Lake Placid, New York, where the 1980 Olympics I believe. So anyway, very cool. Highly recommend it.
You are living a massively different lifestyle than I am. Well, I think we
you have 3 young children, so we're probably
they would
at a
love
soccer
to be
game.
on
you got to be over 100 pounds, so you got some time.
So we got a big show today. Our big topic is something that everyone's been talking about. We're going to go into data centers, particularly the global trends, but also what we see around the North Carolina region and why it's such a big deal. But before we get to the meat of the episode,
The lightning round.
we bring the meat. Do you know what that is?
Arby's. That's we have the meats.
Yeah. Sorry,
we have
ADD'd it up again. The guy, I don't remember, he's somewhere in North Carolina running for the General Assembly, and he sent a mailer out that said so and so brings the meat, and it was pretty hilarious.
Is it like a play on his name?
Well, no, I was like, because I had to keep reading more, and he was like, the meat is referred to as the substance and the content of the campaign.
Like, yeah.
I was like, I get it, and it drew people's
if it
attention.
Was like Senator Paul Charcuterie or something.
He brings the meat.
That would be an amazing. I would vote for that guy, Paul Charcuterie.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I mean, that's
Senator
solid.
from Anson County. Shout out Anson County.
Anyway, so glad we hit that. Yeah. So what's around town? News round. Breakdowns.
Speaking of bring the meat.
Yeah.
Savor Charlotte started today. So happy Savor Charlotte for all who celebrate. It's a 2-week thing that's put on by the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority and
Savor?
Savor.
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 Oh, not like Sabor.
No. And although Sabor is a great place to eat.
Where you could eat there.
Yeah. During Savor Charlotte, you can go to charlottesgotalot.com. You can find there's like all these different restaurants have different deals and menus and special events and things going on over a 2-week period. So different than Restaurant Week, it's not like a 3-course meal at a certain price. Restaurant Week just happened in January. It'll happen again in July. This is something a bit different than that. And it's just the opportunity for lots of our culinary leaders in town to put forward something that they think showcases what makes their restaurant unique, what makes our region unique. So very cool. Check that out, charlottesgotalot.com.
Wow, that's super interesting. What's next?
Well, so as far as other cultural things going on around town, we got one going on this week and one that was announced yesterday for later this year in August. So ACC tournament. You going to make it to any of the ACC tournaments?
Well, I don't know. Are tickets available to the big games that people want?
Depends on
Carolina
depends on which one you want to go. Carolina Duke tomorrow night is going to be a hot ticket. They're not playing each other, but
you're assuming that they're both winning to get to that point.
Well, neither plays today, so they don't have to win.
No, but somebody has to win for those. They have to both win their games.
They don't have games today. So in the ACC
Thursday, they have to win for Friday for Carolina. And I see where our disconnect is. Yeah. I said Carolina versus Duke.
And I meant Carolina and Duke.
Or Duke.
Well, they're both playing in the same session tomorrow night. So if you go tomorrow night on Thursday, the 2 games, one features Carolina, one features Duke. If they both win, they'd be playing on Friday. And that ticket would be probably more expensive than the championship game ticket on Saturday. Went last night, got to see Wake Forest beat Virginia Tech. Go Deeks. And
Go Deeks.
Going back tonight to see Wake Forest hopefully beat Clemson, as well as catch a little bit of the end of the Florida State and someone else game.
The Tigers. Go Tigers.
No, go Deeks.
Go Deeks.
So that's going on from now till Saturday.
Good. That's fun. And hey, guess what? That roots back to us winning the ACC headquarters and it coming back here. That was something that we experienced and worked on during our council days.
Yep. And as part of that deal, obviously the basketball championship was already taking place here on a somewhat regular basis, but other sports ACC championships will be taking place here in Charlotte in the forthcoming years as well. So that's all exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And so long as you're not trying to go to a Duke or Carolina session, there are probably still tickets available at face value or below. And then yesterday, there was a game between SMU, which is in Texas, and Stanford. Not a big crowd for that one.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit of a ways for people to travel, which is why it's odd that in the Atlantic Coast Conference we have teams from California. But neither here nor there. Yesterday, got to go to the press conference yesterday morning for the announcement of the Stellar Awards. Now, I know you are one of my friends that is a huge gospel music fan.
Yeah, I think I might like it.
I mean, I do think you'd enjoy it. Might not be a category you're as
I'm not
familiar
saying
with currently.
I wouldn't say I've ever heard of the Stellar Awards before yesterday.
Have you ever heard of Kirk Franklin?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
wait, is he that guy that we
does gospel
with?
music? No. I'm almost certain you and I have never hung out with Kirk Franklin.
Yes. Oh, Kirk Herbstreit is who I was thinking.
We also didn't hang out with him.
Good point. Great point.
What are you talking about?
So it sounds like the Stellar Awards are going to be something many haven't heard of, but they're going to be brought into the fold on. and it's going to be a really cool event. And we're going to get to know another thing that many of us didn't know about, and
Well,
some people watch very closely.
But a thing that you and I have been passionate about, which is bringing more opportunities for our music industry here. So I think looking at it through that lens, I think you should be pretty excited about it.
I don't 100%. I don't know why I didn't
take that angle in the
dots.
first.
Yeah, I should have done that.
I mean, music everywhere.
Everywhere. CLT.
Music everywhere. CLT.
Okay, what's next?
Well, in our funny humor story of the week, the Charlatan, which people may follow on Instagram. I don't know what other platforms they're on. I follow them on Instagram. We had debated a week or two ago about who we thought it might be. Still don't know that. But what we do know is that the Onion has sent them a cease and desist for the font and color and schematic that they were using.
How's that? I almost thought the whole thing was made up because
I think it's pretty real.
The Onion's pretty sophisticated and busting people's chops.
So
they know they were
teeing
teeing themselves up for this. Maybe it's an elaborate marketing scheme.
Maybe, but if they're being dead serious, then it is kind of a weird look for the Onion to not have much of a sense of humor. But I don't know. They're also they're also a big business now. Weren't they bought by some big conglomerate or something?
Was their logo actually?
It was pretty close.
Similar?
It was pretty close. Yeah, they've got a case.
Maybe.
But wasn't the Onion bought by some huge thing? And maybe now it's these nerd lawyers that aren't the funny people that started the Onion. I don't know.
I immediately was like, "There's no way, it's a joke." But now that you say that, and the logo was close, maybe they're protecting their brand.
Anyway, Onion, if you're listening, and we know you're not, leave our guys alone.
Charlatan,
whoever they are,
Charlatan, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show. We'll put you in one of those backlit spots, and we'll change your voice. The onion came after me pretty hard at home.
That's actually not a bad impersonation of an anonymous 60 Minutes interview.
All I know, Larkin.
Okay, now it's just country.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now you just sound like
Charlatan. We will continue to watch this play out. I bet you. Charlatan subs went up after that story.
Oh,
more awareness.
You meant subscriptions. I'm hungry again, so I immediately started thinking about submarine sandwiches.
Subs, awesome.
And last but not least, in the lightning round, that may or may not have been at lightning speed.
Nope.
The media empire of R&D grows. We got two new. Well, one new of late show, and then one net new show that we've not been on before. Tomorrow we'll be recording two things. A number of things. We'll be doing our BT thing we usually do. We'll be doing our Capital Tonight thing we usually do.
Awesome.
Shout out to our friends at those. We'll also be on with former Governor Pat McCrory on PBS for Unspun.
Unspun.
Things that have been spun, we will unspin them.
I cannot wait. And I'm sure Pat McCrory listens to this pod religiously.
I assume so.
Do you think he's going to get your name correct? There'll be some notes.
Only if we prompt him before we start recording.
It'll be cool to go check that out because obviously he's former mayor, former governor, and good friend. But
you'll be more offended if he mispronounces your name, which is not out of the realm of possibility.
Definitely not. It took him first 10 years we knew each other.
So I'm confident he'll mispronounce Eggleston, but he doesn't know me as well as he knows you.
But now we're expanding into the PBS world.
Yes.
So check that out. I have no idea
Support your local public television.
Channel, what time.
WTVI.
WTVI.
I don't know how you find anything anymore. Like if someone says a thing is on CBS, there's no.
It's like, is that on net? I search Netflix for CBS.
Right. There's no more like, it's Channel 3.
No.
You just go into YouTube TV or.
The world is a changing.
Although, shout out to Spectrum. I think it's still Channel 3 on Spectrum.
Yeah, okay.
I just don't know anymore.
Yeah,
and then we'll also be with our old buddy Ben Thompson. Who you may recognize
BT.
from, oh my God.
R&D with.
His initials are PT too.
Yeah, it's BT, TB, and now PM.
How are so many people's initials BT and TB?
Mine.
Tim Boyum, Beth Thompson,
Bo Thompson, Bo Thompson,
and Beth Troutman.
Chark Bakari.
And Beth Troutman.
Bark and Teggleston.
All right, this is starting to feel like some sort of a Illuminati conspiracy thing. Ben Thompson is bringing back Flashpoint, which has been on ice for 2 years.
Yeah,
we'd been on it several times before when we were on council. It's coming back. I don't know if we're the first episode or the second, but they've just relaunched it, and we're gonna be doing that with him. I don't know if anyone else is on. They've stopped inviting a third guest on that when they'd have us on because the third guest wouldn't get to say much.
I think we owe before we head into the main topic, our loyal listeners just an inside baseball peek if they've noticed difference in energy levels and strangeness in. We started this podcast this morning,
And
and
also, if there's like a weird edit in the
yeah,
middle of the lightning round,
and then there
we
was a
can't really
technical
remember
issue.
exactly where we
There was a
stopped and started.
there was a technical issue, and so then we went and did meetings all day, and then we came back up and picked back up where we left off.
We think.
And I could say my energy level feels totally different in this session.
It's also much
than the
warmer
last.
in this room than it was
Yeah,
earlier,
you hate that.
which is not good for me.
Okay, so
That was the lightning round.
the topic of the day, the big issue that we drop into
That everyone's
data
talking around water coolers.
around water coolers is the topic of data centers. There was an excellent piece by our friend Tim Boyum on Spectrum, where he did a real in-depth story going across the state, looking at different projects.
Insights,
We've talked about this with Tim on his show several times. We had a big episode topic a couple weeks ago about AI and those implications. This all sits atop that. This is the foundation of the discussion.
Right. AI can't happen without an increasing amount of capacity as it relates to these data centers.
Exactly. So whether it's the AI,
but not just AI can't happen. Most everything we do computing wise can't happen, and I think that's what's interesting about this conversation. I like when we talked about AI. Like, this is something you know more about than I do. I think that the way people are talking about data centers is as if they were not a thing before AI. They were a thing before AI. AI is just causing a need for expanded capacity, right?
Exactly. And so, per your prodding, instead of jumping right into the nerdy details, for those who kind of have that same, like, I've heard about it, I don't know, let's start by defining what a data center is, right? The simplest way to think about it is a data center is basically a giant warehouse full of computers that store and process information for the internet. So picture South End and what that was and what it's become, but instead of bars and gyms, it's full of computers. That's step one. I know that was terrible. Look, we're tired. We already said that.
That was the clumsiest.
So every time
analogy
that you send a text, you stream Netflix, or if you find what channel CBS is or whatever it is, upload a photo, use Google Maps, ask AI, ChatGPT, or any of the other Claude tools you might use a question. That request just doesn't float out in this thing called the cloud that we all wonder. It's a physical place that it travels to with thousands and thousands of computers that are very powerful. And that's where the information gets processed and sent back to you in a split second. That building is a data center. And to your point, AI didn't create it. Data centers have existed for decades and decades and decades, all the way to back with mainframe data centers and punch cards and stuff like that. It's just that demand has risen
need more of them now.
To crazy levels. So the best analogy might be electricity 100 years ago. Just like the country had to build power plants and electrical infrastructure to power the industrial age, today we're building data centers to power the digital age. So these are the factories of the modern economy, except instead of making steel or cars, they're producing computing power. And that computing power is what makes everything from streaming video to banking to national defense systems to AI actually work. So that's kind of the punchline of what a data center is.
But I think the way most people like myself who are not in the tech space as much as you are, I think the way that most people have started to hear about data centers is because there's this community pushback. There's some environmental concerns, there's community concerns, and then now the news that you see of data centers is not so much of like explaining the need, explaining the alternatives if they exist, or the things that might put our country at risk if we're not keeping up with some of this stuff. I think now it's more that people just hear about what has lately been sort of a rash of local government bodies saying, well, we don't know a lot about this, because again, most of us don't know a lot about this. We don't know a lot about this. Our constituents don't know a lot about this. So let's just do like a 1-year moratorium or a however many year moratorium and say we're not going to have any of these in our community. And I think they think they're sort of playing it safe. But I think what's maybe not happening is there's just not really a conversation to better understand the issue. It's this knee-jerk reaction of, well, let's just like close the door and try to figure it out, and then maybe we'll reopen the door in the future. And that's where I think people are seeing this in the news, is you're seeing that some counties in our state even have passed these moratoriums, and maybe they're just a year, but it doesn't seem like in the lead up to those votes there's any attempt to better understand the issue.
So, all right. So to better, that's the meat of this podcast episode, that I hope that in a dialogue, we can at least start the conversation. What is the topic? What is the pushback, the friction? Where's the truth? And where is the misconception? But also, why is this important? Right. So we just defined it. So I suggest that we start at the highest level, and I'll toss out to you why I care so much, and I am, with the right approaches, a proponent of us owning this topic. And then let's dialogue that. And then we'll drop all the way down to the more micro factors that we see in communities as they rise up. So for me, there are really two macro reasons why I don't just like this. I think it's an imperative. It is fundamental, and we have to win, and we have to do this. And remember,
but what is winning? Like, it's an imperative that we
great point,
strengthen our infrastructure in this space,
that we own the entire supply chain.
And who's we? The United States?
The United States of digital, and North Carolina and the Charlotte region, right? But the United States definitely of the entire supply chain of, let's just call it, this new age
power,
fourth industrial revolution digital infrastructure. And that includes where we just defined the data center.
Computing power, right? I mean,
yeah. But think of it in this, in a stack. We define the data centers here, right? Towards the front office of this area, you've got the tools and things people use, from streaming and text, the public facing parts, exactly, to the AI systems that are now taking over. Go back to our other episode a couple of weeks ago if you want why that's important. But then there's, aside from the data center, then there's the entire supply chain. Go back a couple episodes before that when we talked about the new Siemens announcement in North Carolina. And one of the things they're doing is generating the fiber out of a factory that actually wires that stuff up, the power, the cooling, and sometimes water, sometimes air, all the way up to the actual chips that go inside all the GPUs and CPUs needed to run these things. So it's all a big stack, and every part of that, you don't want to rely on an outside force. So that's
like China.
Point number one is I think this is a battle against who owns that stuff. And is it going to be primarily the two leaders in the clubhouse are China and the United States? And you could make an argument India or some others might be in there. But right now, those are the two dominant factors.
Well, it's the same thing that we've seen with drones for like emergency service use, which this came up to me, I think, I don't remember if it was while I was working in Congress or in the Department of Justice, but it was one or the other. And we had, there were real concerns about the security of a lot of our emergency agencies using Chinese drones, because Chinese drones had advanced at that time, I guess, beyond A, China's always going to be able to make stuff cheaper, but B, like the technology was good enough that you had a lot of agencies saying, well, I want this Chinese drone. And then people are going, what access are they going to have to the information that this drone is transmitting and things like that. So we run into a problem when we fall behind in some of these emerging technologies that, okay, there's a product out there that people want to use. TikTok was kind of like that too, but now we don't know what access China has to all the information being run through that.
And it's access and who is going to train and shape and set the rules of the road for all of these use cases. And if you don't own the AI computing power and the physical infrastructure or the models that ultimately are trained over time, the punchline of that concern isn't just like we have to beat China and be more powerful. It's our forms of government are very different. And in our form of government, and democratic republic, with all the conversations and things, and people might argue we aren't doing it perfect. When you compare it to a more dictatorship-based kind of approach of China,
even at our worst, we have more guardrails than China.
Like there are already countless stories of how they're using it to control population or to have national and international espionage, all kinds of things like that. So like all the nightmares and the things we talked about in the nightmare scenarios of the AI episode we went into, it, the rubber meets the road in who trains these models and what kind of dialogues as a society we have to teach it how it should interact and what it should do. And there are so many terrifying things that are there. So my first big reason why I believe we need to do this is in the sense, national security and the global, steadfastness of where the world is going to be when this happens. And this is the fourth industrial revolution, right? By definition of what we've seen. The second reason goes back also to another thing we discussed in our AI episode, which is I think we're facing this terrifying moment of how AI is going to disrupt in this fourth industrial revolution the way that the workforce and work and the economy is structured globally. And we're going to see these jobs go away. And so those who have the infrastructure and are there are ultimately they're at least going to have the opportunity to step up. So in the fourth, that's fourth. The other three industrial revolutions, this is really important to me. The first one was steam power, mechanized manufacturing, steam engine, textile mills, all that stuff. It was late 1700s, mid 1800s. And the work moved from farms and homes to factories, massive displacements of artisans, agricultural workers. And there was violent resistance, right? The second one was electricity and mass production. Factories scaled more massively, huge productivity gains, small businesses were wiped out, labor unrest. And then the third was computers, 1970s to 2000s. By the way, the second was early 1800s to 1900s. Third was computers and the internet, microchips, and really the automation replaced many of the manufacturing jobs that had grown up there. Globalization was accelerated. And so the only reason I say all that, because it's really important, of the three that were before this, it is almost not arguable that the first industrial revolution had the most violent backlash, the biggest change. And when you look at Luddite uprisings, right? Textile workers began destroying mechanized looms and mills. Thousands of workers participated. 12,000 troops the British government deployed to stop them there. Machine breaking became a capital offense. And all these folks who ultimately had jobs, there was no job to replace it. The second and third industrial revolution, you saw more of like, okay, they transitioned into this, but that first one was like, there was nothing to transition into. And when we talk about the fourth, and in that other episode,
how are you delineating the third and the fourth? And is this an agreed upon?
It's a real time moving target. In fact, when I used to talk about this 10 years ago, we talked about the third a little more hazily because we weren't sure. So now I think the new way to talk, first and second are standard and everyone views them that way.
Like, yeah.
Third was like the internet age. And we didn't understand if third stopped and fourth started. I think now while some expert out there may challenge me, it's pretty consistent that the third was, so if it was steam and manufacturing to electricity and manufacturing to the internet as third, fourth is the AI revolution. And who knows? The reason why the impacts and what we might look at, we're living in the beginning days of it now. So we don't know, but let's assume that 100 years from now, somebody looks back, they say, just like we are now at the first, they say that was the moment, much like the first, where 50% of white collar screen-based jobs go away, right? So I think the punchline of why that part is so important to wrap this long narrative up, is if it is different, more like the first, and there's blood in the streets and people uprising because there was no transition from them to go, at this time, the white collar jobs, those cities, states, and countries that replace and have a part of the new ecosystem, which is the supply chain of data centers to AI. And if the jobs just go away, at least there will be opportunities with tax revenues that come off of them to retrain and rescale and at least try to somewhat win in a net losing scenario. So those are the two. It isn't like, hey, private sector and the economy needs to make money, let's let data centers happen. Like, I'm a real true believer that those are fundamental things. And while the direction may change a little bit, we're pointing at something that is this important. So does that make sense as it relates to like how would you respond to not
Yeah,
being someone who thinks
I
about
mean,
those two things in relation to this on a regular basis?
I think that the overarching theme of these sorts of seismic shifts in what work looks like and what society looks like and just how the world works is that change is unnerving to people. I think people, and that's what we're seeing. I mean, it does feel parallel when you say that people were destroying factory machines and things that they viewed as a threat to them. In that case, probably more a threat in the sense of a job replacement. But again, there's the parallel there because we talked about AI replacing jobs. Um, sort of computers doing work and replacing the humans that would have done it prior. So I think that there's already some inherent unease around AI, and maybe more in that job replacement part. And then again, too, I think as people, as I said, I think people, because data centers is the thing they hear about now, they're viewing them maybe in the same way of an environmental and a community threat, the way that people might have used to have been freaked out if they lived near transmission towers, like
Yeah.
power lines, transmission towers, and things like that. You go, well, I don't know, I don't necessarily want that to be in my community. I know I need the power, but I don't necessarily want that transmission tower to be, a quarter mile from my house.
So that's an easy one, I think. And now as we transition into more of the micro local things that are happening, I think that's where people are, and that's the
Or even
difference.
just like a general misunderstanding. I mean, there's so many things.
It's easy to think about. I don't want that thing in my backyard, whether it's the 5G tower that may or may not cause cancer, or the loud, energy consuming data center. But it's
but
hard.
Even stuff like, I'm thinking about the steam power plants that Duke Energy has, and people, you be in the car with somebody when you by one, and there's the towers where there's literally just steam coming off the towers, and people don't even understand that that's. And I'm not making fun of them because most of us don't have a reason to need to know, but they don't even understand that's a steam power plant. They think it's nuclear, and they go, "Oh, what is that?
Exactly.
What's that releasing?"
But
Well,
even that was my
vapor.
secondary point, which is they don't even realize that. I bet our listeners, if you're not in this space or talk about or think about it regularly, to think that the first industrial revolution, that was the power behind, had blood in the streets, had uprisings and huge tranches of the workforce out with people like in really desperate scenarios. It's hard to fathom that even existed, let alone compare it to maybe what we're facing, in the next decade or so.
And I think where we might end up at the end of this conversation is that not all these fears are entirely unfounded. Some of them might be with the benefit of hindsight. You might say, "Oh, well, that was an overreaction." Again, with anything, I mean, just 6 years ago, COVID. I mean, the things that everything's scary until you understand it better, and then like, as with COVID, some of those fears were very well founded. Some of them we realized with the benefit of hindsight, okay, we would have done that differently. And I think where we might end up in this conversation today, and maybe in the bigger picture, is the key is to better for everyone to better understand, and then to put up guardrails, to have policies and have protections for the things that we are concerned about, which we'll start to unpack here momentarily, and then enforce them and make sure that as we know more, we do better, but that we're also putting up those guardrails so that the first industrial revolution in factories or whatever, we don't have people losing limbs and kids working in factories, whatever. There were some bad things that came of that, and then you start to put up guardrails and regulations and enforce them, and you start to mitigate those risks.
And that is, I totally agree with that. And I think the problem of where we are right now in this kind of chapter of this history, and wherever it ends up, is right now you've got two sides, and one side wants this to happen, and in many cases it's the developer or the company that needs the data center capacity or whoever. And on the other side, it's the anti, which is the community that activates and says, for these reasons that we've talked about, it's electricity is going to be used up and I'm going to pay for it. The water it takes to cool is going to pollute or, suck up, deplete all of our resources. It's going to be loud. instead of coming
And
in,
I think part of so I think there's two pieces there. There are those concerns that are more specific, but then I think more broadly, part of it is I think people have a tendency to want to be like kind of take the better safe than sorry approach. And I don't think anyone's done a good job of trying to frame any of these conversations in a way that tells the average resident of a community how there's any benefit whatsoever to them other than, oh, well, you use your cell phone and you want to keep using your cell phone and all the things on it, you're going to need some of these data centers. But I think there's a case to make, and then an individual can weigh whether they think the pros outweigh the cons. But I don't think anybody's pitching the pros. I don't think anybody's talking about, um, the jobs are there. But I think your point about tax impact is really what it comes down to for a lot of these small communities that don't have a lot of revenue. They used to have factories, and those factories have closed. I mean, that's going to end up being the big part, is it can plug holes in budgets, particularly in smaller communities that were decimated years ago in the maybe in that transition from the second to the third industrial
yes.
revolution.
So exactly. So it is my belief that where we are is you got the people who want to build it, and you got the opposition, which is normally neighborhoods, who the approach they are taking is, I'm against it. I don't want it to happen. I'm going to fight and do everything I can to make it not happen. And you and I sat through over the last decade dozens and dozens of controversial rezonings. We learned first, and while they weren't data centers for the most part, they were controversial and they had all the same dynamics. And I think we learned a lot through that period. And I think that is the solution for where we are now. If you don't want something, right? Like it depends on how your motive and how you're setting yourself up to go after. If you're going after, say, I'm going to beat this and try to come up with any angle, right or wrong, and beat it, and the only win is beating it,
Or if you have
versus
specific concerns,
how do
I
come
address
up?
them?
So I think it all is in the structure, and this can be, once a blueprint is out there, a grassroots bottom up initiative where everybody can win, because it's not how do I stop this? It's how do I get to yes and meet my community and my
If
personal
this is what you
requirements?
want to build and this is what you want to put in our community, this is what we want in return.
So I think the formula, and again, we've been putting thought into this for years, and doing it with regular rezonings. I think the same thing applies here. So any neighborhood or community that is doing this, I think you create it custom. There's no single silver bullet that solves it, but you come in there and you have this approach of, how do I get to a win-win yes through targeted, specific community benefits. And that does not mean someone generically says, this is going to churn out this many millions of additional tax revenue that drops into your general fund.
Which
What
doesn't
it is
mean much to the average
exactly
person.
like that. It's a negotiation. And if I believe if these community groups focus their time sitting down and saying, what do we want? What are our demands? And they say, okay, well, first demand is, I want to have transparency and understand, as national and state level catch up is occurring, that I'm not going to pay more for power because this is happening.
Now, one of the things that's tricky there is we, the collective, we are likely 5 years from now, regardless of anything else, going to be paying more for power. So then it's hard to know where to ascribe that increase. But yeah, I think there needs to be a demonstrable way to say, look, power costs are going up, power transmission is going up, but we are going to make these data center users and builders and operators pay their fair share, so that is not the reason, and that is not a cause of additional increase in the cost of your power to your local business or your family's home or whatever.
And in most cases today, I won't say all, but in most cases that I've seen, there actually is a pretty robust approach that's like, you're going to pay for the power you take and the additional infrastructure needs that we have to create for you
to transmit that
as
power,
part of this. So it's already we're almost at where that puck is today, and that's only going to get better as more transparency and sophistication comes from state level rate setting entities. And they know they have to deal with this, but you even saw the president in the last State of the Union talk about, hey, there's going to be a kind of a pact that goes out there, and it's about transparency. It's the same with payday lending. Payday lending is not a bad thing if you're not getting gouged, right? The problem is there's a lot of gouge. It's not transparent. It's not regulated. It's not
Right.
there.
So how do you rein in the bad actors?
So there is a top-down solution that's ultimately coming, but the power concerns are a lot closer today. And instead of saying, no, this is going to happen, the communities through the community benefits approach say, our demand is simple. Prove to us that we are not going to get that impact and we'll support it. That's term number one. And I think the same then goes for term number two. Again, going in the likelihood of the issues they say is, okay, the water and all the depletion and all these things. Well, that technology is advancing rapidly. Open loop systems that take from surrounding waterways and dump back in. It's going more towards closed loop systems, and it's going more towards, air-based cooling technologies. So this is becoming less of a problem. But again, case by case basis.
But no one's telling that story.
Prove us. Well,
yeah.
it's not. But I think my broader point is it's not just the responsibility of the developers and the users of this technology to go and make the case and make everyone understand. When the communities start to understand, but start to say, hey, our term number two is, this is our expectation. You need to prove that to us. And then all of a sudden they're coming back. It's not about moving the goalpost like we saw with many rezonings throughout it, just to get to know. It's like, if you've handled, my power is not going to go up because of you, at least.
You're not going to impact our water supplies and waterways.
You're not going to impact that. 3, noise. Noise is an issue.
How are you going to build your building so
how are
it
you
doesn't
build
impact
it?
our quality of life?
All the things that are there. And then once you get to those 3, I think then you get into some real interesting points. And this is where I would encourage communities to spend most of their time, which is community benefits of forecasting, like we talked about, the tax, impacts. That's one thing. But coming in and saying, project specific, we need a pocket park over here. Our schools need this, and you can be as creative as you want here. And where we ultimately, so you lay those out and you say, okay, you're telling me there's going to be 25 million extra dollars a year coming into our city coffers, into the general fund, or our budget is going to be supported by another 50% increase. It isn't just that. It's like, here's our deal. We want to strike that deal.
That's not just a deal with that's not really even a deal with the developer at that point. It's a deal with your elected officials, which I think is even more effective because they're more consistently accountable to you as a citizen of that community.
The whole thing is a tri-party agreement.
Yeah,
for sure.
But I think that there's the part of that we used to do a lot, which is very transactional with the developer, to say, hey, we'd love to use the back of your site to connect this greenway. We'd love to use the back of your site because it's near a waterway for like public access to, a kayak input or whatever. I mean, literally things that granular to, or planting trees or tree save or whatever that we would use as tools for negotiation. But then to your point about the taxes, that's an agreement between the community and the electeds, who ultimately are going to be approving or denying a lot of these things.
But it can be contractually documented as part of that tri-party deal. Or doesn't have to be some promise here or elections. There.
But it's like, okay, because there's also going to be people who go, okay, well, $50 million extra dollars into our municipal coffers would be great, except I don't trust my local elected officials. And so then you go, okay, well, commissioner or council member or whatever, if we're getting $50 extra million a year as spun off in tax revenue because of this project, tell me what it's going to be spent on, or let me tell you what I think it ought to be spent on. That rural hospital that closed, we want it reopened. The elementary school they had to shut down because it's got asbestos or whatever. Now we got twice as many kids going to the other elementary school in our community. We want, a new school built, or we want a whatever.
We want broadband, complete internet access. We want, going back to the Industrial Revolution, the AI concerns I had, workforce training programs for our disrupted industry and talent pipeline that's coming up.
Because even, and we're, I think, about to start to see this through tax increases or service decreases, but even in large communities as successful as Charlotte and Mecklenburg, the budgets are getting a little squeezed right now, and it's only that much worse in the smaller communities around our state. And so I think the impact that this might have to a Charlotte or Mecklenburg budget wouldn't be insignificant, but it's just a piece of a very large pie. But to your point earlier, there are going to be rural communities whose annual budget may be, $10 or $20 million or less in some cases, where this could mean they go from a $10 million budget to a 15 or a 20 to a 30. And those things all of a sudden change the whole dynamics of a community. And there's some jobs included too, which is a nice perk. But even if there were no jobs, if you go from a $20 million budget to a 30 every year, you can make some real positive changes in every realm of your community every year in your budget. So, but again, the community needs to say, all right, well, tell me what those are going to be, and let's have it in a form that I feel like it's an obligation, not just a theory.
And it's like, it's because our experience over the last 10 years really informs us from different angles on this. One of the things that really always got to me, and I pushed back on communities and neighborhoods a lot on this, when they were like, oh, this big, building is trying to be rezoned in around a neighborhood, and it's 17 floors, and we want it to be at 15. I look at them like, is 2 floors really, is that going to make this a great win for you? Or is getting $10 million of community benefits for things that you will experience and walk by every single day? Too often people go up and they say either, well, bring this down a little bit, and it's not going to change a bit of their daily life, either because they think that is a win, or because they really just want to get to a no. And they know that the project doesn't pencil anymore 2 floors less. So I think my big, if I was to summarize those points, as we're evolving and the world catches up with us, communities have such an amazing opportunity ahead of them to, one, use this community benefits and negotiating approach to get to yes, to say, prove to me my terms. I'm not going to pay more for power. I'm not going to have depletion and issues from the water for cooling. I'm not going to have noise impacts that are here for that. And then when you ultimately, when the feds catch up, you're going to see more of a Bill of Rights that becomes no longer needed to be negotiated and proven. Law will catch up to your earlier point, and it'll make that happen. And then the real magic happens in the community benefit negotiation of what the tax dollars go to and what things that they experience every day. And while on day one, and while we're in kind of the space we're in, they negotiate workforce development or broadband or whatever they need over time, like Charlotte did with the UDO and the things we put in place there. You codify that into your community area plan, where you no longer do it transactionally. You say what you want. You say what is necessary, and people can see that and say, they can come to you with the pitch and say, I know you guys want these things. How about we lock this in place?
And part of this is knowing that is making sure your community's zoning is up to date.
Yeah.
Both in the policies you have that guide and regulate what can be built, how it has to be built, setbacks, all these things, but also just that, like, these would, I assume, go into like an industrially zoned area, right? So it's not, you can't tear down someone's single family house in the middle of a neighborhood and put a data center. But in the same way that there would be people who would go, well, I just don't want certain kinds of industrial uses right by my house. Totally understood and totally reasonable. And that's why zoning exists, so that you can't just drop industrial uses in the middle of the neighborhood. So again, going back and being proactive around saying, okay, what parts of our community would these be more and less appropriate? Let's make sure the zoning is reflective of that. I think one other thing that this is maybe a whole other main subject matter for a future episode, which would probably require us bringing on a different subject matter expert. But I think one of the big things that's an opportunity here, but is also going to require tons of better understanding for all of us throughout the community, is how do you, if we're going to have these power needs, which we are just flat out, we're going to require more power. How do we, well, it is, I think it's nuclear, because we're not going to generate all that power through, I mean, first of all, there are many people, including myself, who would say, if we have to generate all this power through dirty power generation, that's not okay. But we're also not going to immediately, or even in the medium term, probably be able to meet it all through solar or wind. And those things take up obviously great amount of space and have their own implications environmentally. I do believe that the future of clean power is probably in nuclear, but there's obviously history in nuclear that has people very concerned, and reasonably so. So what is the future of nuclear? And I think, to me, just as one person, I'd feel more comfortable with this future uh, demand of energy that's going to be orders of magnitude higher than what we're currently at if I had more confidence in the future of clean nuclear and that it could actually be deployed and utilized. I just don't understand enough about that issue either to feel like that can be the answer.
So I was going to make something up. I also don't know.
Right. Well, that's why I said we'd have to bring another person. Because if you started to pretend that you're a nuclear expert, I was going to call BS.
I've had a lot of conversations that lead me to believe there is a lot of very near-term potential with that. But I would love for us to find an expert. That might be, I mean, if power is the central aspect to this entire storyline, right? Then I think that would be good. So let's
how
do
we create it without so many of those negative impacts? Because again, I think a lot of the concerns that people have, they are quality of life in their own like individual lives. But I think a lot of it does. And again, I think a lot of it's valid and things that need to either be addressed, or you say, yes, 5-10 years ago, that was an environmental impact that we'd not solved for, but we're solving for it now. And here's how we've moved the needle in that regard. And those environmental concerns are largely around, okay, well, what if it's going to require this much power? What else does that mean? And
listen, data centers are the factories that we saw in the first industrial revolution that changed the world. They're the factories for the digital age. And to me, I think the punchline is, I wouldn't tell any community that you just say yes to data centers no matter what. There are many scenarios by which fighting to stop it is the right call. But if everyone is always just fighting to stop it, and you're not taking an approach trying to get to a yes that benefits everyone and solves the misconceptions that they have to prove to you, and the community benefits outweigh and make this make sense for everyone, like, you should try to get to yes. North Carolina should try to win. The United States has to win. And if it's not North Carolina, it'll be somewhere else. But if it's nowhere else, China will win. Well, and that really concerns me. So we have to.
And the moratoriums just aren't the answer to really anything. Like,
no,
I mean, because we had people all the time that wanted, you should just not allow any more growth.
Well, look at them. We're theoretically in a couple-month moratorium for the I-77 toll lanes.
That's not a moratorium much. It's a delay, but
all right, fine. But, I mean, it's the same thing, right?
The moratorium,
how do we get to yes?
Yeah,
fits a lot of different topics rather than saying no altogether to everything.
Putting the 77 thing on ice while they keep working on it is more of they're looking at a specific project with concerns about a specific project. My argument in saying the moratoriums don't work is like to say just a blanket, we're a no on anything in this whole category doesn't make sense.
My point.
And everything has to be take it case by case and go, that one doesn't make sense, but over here it actually does.
Current city council members, new ones, or people who have aspirations, my entire blueprint for rezonings, which is the same argument we're making right now, it was never convince me to be yes or no. I was trying to be an equal kind of moderator in the middle. But whenever somebody said no, I say, well, give me what is a reasonable yes of what you want, that if it's met, all right, without moving the goalpost after we said it, like, then I'm going to support that. And if it isn't, then I'm going to support you.
Yeah.
And to me, that is because right now there's too much misinformation and too much opportunity lost without having that approach. That is the biggest gap, in my opinion, that communities have across the nation right now in a real-time evolving scenario where they're scared and they have a role to play. It isn't the role of everyone else to come and say, here's why all of your concerns are not meaningful. Some of them are, but it requires work on their side as well.
And addressing them and concessions. Yeah. And so I think, I mean, I think we're close here to the putting a bow on this.
Yes.
I hope.
I'm exhausted.
It's been a long day.
I
got to go cheer on my Demon Deacons again.
I was screaming a lot.
Thankfully, there's some fabric in this room, so it absorbs a little better than in the.
Your voice sounds like a bunch of rocks being rotated in a bucket that has a handle on it.
You realize you have basically the same type of voice.
No chance, dude.
Yes.
Yours is like this.
Nope. I also didn't randomly develop a list, but, uh, but I think the punchline here is like not just data centers, but really all land use decisions, all community decisions should be taken on a case by case basis, addressed on a case by case basis. And it's just, there is a need here. It's going to be met somewhere, somehow. Be proactive in making sure that your community planning, that your zoning, that you've got guardrails up and that you've got things. If noise is a concern, and it is in a lot of these, we have noise ordinances. And if people are not meeting them, they need to be held accountable.
Set the rules. Let me ask you this question. So I think we're in violent agreement there, surprisingly. Okay.
I'm in a violent battle with this microphone.
I see. I am too, a little bit. Let me ask you this one last question. Let's scenario out that you're still on council right now. A rezoning.
I already don't like this.
I don't like it. A rezoning comes forth for a data center in your district, let's say, and the community
the most powerful
activates.
district.
It is now, I guess. The community activates, much like we've seen them, of they are no, and how do we kill this? And there is no negotiation happening. You see that. You go out and you try to broker, like we used to, between the groups of, hey, I'm not here to pick sides. I'm here to be an honest broker, set some meaningful things if they're met. And that community group doesn't do it, but you are 3 months before an election cycle. What do you do?
Well, I mean, that's part of the problem with some of what we've seen is that with 2-year election cycles, which many localities have, people constantly feel like they're running for re-election. And so when a big group of people comes out and says, we don't think we want this, and have, varying degrees of specific reasons why, it makes people gun shy. And I think it's a little hard for us to imagine because we both represented very densely developed districts.
Yeah, but a data center for somebody else in a more rural area is the same as a multifamily 25-story building next to neighborhoods.
I mean, again, I think with all of those projects, there were people who were operating in good faith in their opposition, and those usually would be the ones I'd try to wrangle and say, all right, let's us talk, because I can see that you have real concerns that are well founded. And you've got ideas for how we can address those
now.
Yeah. But then you also have people who, to your point, are just contrarian and don't really have an idea of what they'd rather have or what they want changed, or they just don't like the person involved.
The number of debates I had with people like that was wild.
Well, and that's where at some point, if you're not operating in good faith, I'm just not going to engage you. But there were people who I grew to trust in the different communities.
So what would you do as an elected in that situation? You did a great job of explaining why it's a tough situation. What would you do if now with this, let's say this new blueprint we just laid out in this episode is kind of at least a inside baseball known thing, and you know how important it is, but you also don't want to lose your election, and you try. What
I think
what
I
do
did
you
on
do?
a couple of instances. I tried to gather myself the collective concerns of the community and understand them and then get them addressed. And there would be times where I would take votes and I'd say, look, you told me what your concerns were. I believe they've been meaningfully addressed. And I now feel obligated that I've gotten all these concessions to support the project because this is what I heard you saying you wanted different. And then you just deal with the consequences. The problem is I don't think there's enough people, and this is why I think there's some value in term limits. There's not enough people willing to lose. Like, you've ultimately got to try to do the best you can to find middle ground on all these things. And if you feel like it's the right thing and you go, look, I know I might lose my election, but if I'm in a community that has a $20 million budget and I can literally flip a switch and turn that into a $30 million annual budget, I know the impacts that's going to have. And 20 years from now, people are going to go, damn, maybe he was right. We've got that hospital reopen. We've got that elementary school reopen. We've got this greenway system. We've got whatever it is. But like, if you go, I know the impacts it's going to have, and I'm willing to lose my election because I feel that strongly about it, be proven right 10, 20 years from then and get your flowers at that time and be willing to not be in office for going forward.
See, and this is,
but I don't think there's a lot of that out there.
But again, I think this is another great use case and example of the benefits of the community benefit negotiation model we talked about. It isn't just for the neighborhoods and the people who want a win on their side. It's also, it becomes, it turns an elected official's role from doing two things. One, hey, explain to them your point and listen to their concerns. And if their concerns are all like, no, we don't want it. And they're like, but we need to do it. And then at the end, do the second thing, which is I have to pick a side, versus saying in the beginning, here's the framework. We are going to negotiate this. Lay out your list. I'm going to help call balls and strikes.
Demands.
I'm going to say, this is a ridiculous ask. No, you cannot have a floating refrigerated warehouse as part of your community benefit. But this ask,
no one wants that anyway.
Yeah, they do. This ask for, that's the last thing I need proven right, by the way. This ask for these enhancements to the Greenway, the park, the workforce training program, and the school are all reasonable. These asks for prove me out on energy, on cooling, and on noise. Okay, if in good faith we can get these answered, everybody wins. If you guys are still in disagreement after we get these answered, I'm going to see who operated in the best faith on that list. And then all of a sudden, you're not basing it on who you're siding with. You're basing it on the rules you set out for everyone to operate in the beginning.
If they're
it is a cheat code for elected officials, whether it's data centers or other controversial rezonings, to be able to use. And I just see far too often it isn't used that way. So where do we go from here, Larkin?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I think we have an episode soon on power generation.
Nuclear. God, that's gonna do. We're getting nerdier and nerdier.
We're gonna be way in over our heads, but we get a couple of people in with us.
Actually, I might know a couple of people that could be candidates for coming in.
But I mean, again, this is not something that, much like the mechanical looms or whatever, like
they're not
gonna. Isn't that what you call them?
Mechanical looms? Yeah.
Is that not what you called them?
I don't know if I called them that.
What did you just call them earlier? You said people were trying to like attack the looms in the factories.
I did say that.
Yeah. So like, just like those,
it just was funny hearing
just
you
being
say
against it. It's not going to mean that these things don't happen.
Yeah, dude.
So have input in how they happen. Have input in the guardrails around them to make sure that that the pros outweigh the cons. Because can't lose to China.
Indeed.
That's how. Is that the bow on the?
I think package? That's it. I think that's it. So
hopefully, don't lose to China.
Yeah, hopefully this has been found interesting and helpful.
And if not, we'll get back to silly stuff next week.
Yeah, well, we should. But we just see so much of this. So I think this was our opportunity to tie it all together, if you will.
Shout out to Mboya.
Yeah, and show how it's all related, and but also how the stakes sometimes aren't fully understood as to why it's necessary. So with that,
it's time for me to go cheer on my demon deacons.
And it's time for me to not do that.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah, you're not invited. So
okay.
Good.
Well, that's another episode in the books.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week. Or you can watch us on any one of the 37 things we're doing this week on every media platform.
Yeah, we're gonna have to ratchet back on that.
Yeah.
Good talk, Larkin.
Later.
Good talk, Tark.